Earlier this year, I played through Rhythm Heaven Fever and made a ranking video of all the minigames in it. Since it was my introduction to the series and I liked it a lot, I of course wanted to try out the other Rhythm Heaven games. First, I downloaded Megamix on my 3DS, but I never finished it because I got bored of all the simplified levels. I really should finish that game. Later on, I bought Rhythm Heaven DS, the only other game released here in North America. Now, Fever is generally considered to be the better game between the two, but to my surprise, I actually ended up liking the DS entry way more. And keep in mind, I already liked Fever a lot. I think the games in DS are far more consistently good and replayable, and I love the game's control scheme. So, just like with Fever, I'm now going to rank all 50 games from Rhythm Heaven DS from worst to best. Same disclaimers I made in the previous video still apply. Here we go. 50. Philbots 2. Oh my god, why is this game over 3 minutes long? Philbots 2 is twice as long as most minigames, and as far as I'm aware, it's the longest non-remix game in DS. I just don't get why it had to be Philbots. The gameplay isn't very interesting, you're just filling up 3 kinds of robots for the entirety of the game. Seriously, there's about 5 times you think the game is finally over, but it just keeps going. Luckily, in my opinion, this is the only outright bad game in Rhythm Heaven DS, and it's still much better than the worst in Fever because there are actually things I like about this game, namely the music. It's really good and varied throughout the game. It doesn't make playing it any less tedious, but it's something. 49. Splashdown. Imagine this, you've just finished set 4 of the game, which, spoilers for the list, is amazing. Every single game is really good and it ends with the incredibly high energy Remix 4. You're feeling great, and then the game wants you to play this. Yeah, as a game, Splashdown would rank higher, but come on, this is just so lame compared to what you just experienced that I refuse to put it any higher. 48. Remix 7. I can't believe I'm putting Remix 7 all the way down at number 48. Going in, I thought this would be a remix I absolutely loved, but as you can tell, that wasn't the case. Let's start with the positives this time. It has a sky theme, which, if you watch my Fever ranking, you'll know I love. And the theme of the music this time is soft rock, aka the best kind of music. Plus, the song is really good, and it's stuck in my head as I'm writing the sentence. So with all these positives, what's the issue with Remix 7? The gameplay is the issue. It's just so repetitive and drags on for so long. Most of the game is spent just switching between Fan Club and Frog Hop. Why? You can use any other game, include some variety. And when it does switch up the games at the end, it's nothing special, it just repeats those for a little while, until the Big Rock finish, which is admittedly fantastic. 47. Philbots. It's a shorter version of Philbots 2. Literally. Philbots 1 is pretty much just the first half of Philbots 2, but easier. It doesn't drag on for nearly as long, but again, the gameplay just isn't something I'm a huge fan of. 46. The Dazzles. I don't really have anything to say about this one. It's a game about cheerleaders posing in time with a love song. It's fine. 45. The Dazzles 2. Literally the exact same game as the first one, but with better music and orange. 44. Remix 2. Remix 2 doesn't play very well due to how slow it is. Well, not inherently because it's slow, but the games in the second set just don't really work at this speed, with the exception of Bluebirds. Shoot 'em up is really hard to get the first time around because of how long the pause is between when it gives the pattern and when you have to repeat it. The music and theme are alright, but it doesn't make up for any of the remix's issues. 43. Freeze Frame. This is the first game I think of when talking about games that just kinda exist. Freeze Frame is fairly memorable, but it doesn't really stand out in any aspect. The gameplay is somewhat repetitive, but the inclusion of the background characters is actually really neat. 42. Splashdown 2. Splashdown, but I'm not biased based on what I just played beforehand. If this game was one spot later, I probably would be, but that's besides the point. Splashdown 2 is just okay. Nothing really to say about the gameplay. 41. Fan Club. Notable for being the only Rhythm Heaven DS game to feature Monkey. This is a game about responding to lyrical cues, and while I don't like the song, the gameplay itself is actually pretty solid. Definitely a bit short, and there's too much time spent doing nothing. 40. Fan Club 2. This is one of the games I'm the most mixed on. Fan Club 2 fixes many of the issues I had with the first game, but does some stupid things at the same time, so I decided to place it right above the original. The song is now twice as long, and the second half is actually pretty alright. The spots where nothing happened in the original are now replaced by a new cue as well. But this might be the most unfair minigame I've played so far. In Fan Club 1 and the first half of Fan Club 2, you have to respond to the words I suppose. But in the second half of Fan Club 2, you have to do the same thing with the word wonderful, and the game doesn't tell you this. This wouldn't be that bad, but if you miss one of the cues, you automatically fail. And I've heard the grading scale on Rhythm Heaven DS was unfair, but I didn't really have any issues, except with this game. Alright, next I'm going to bring up Airborder real quick. This is the credits game for Rhythm Heaven DS. Rhythm Heaven Fever also had a credits game, Nightwalk, but to me it didn't feel the same as the main games, and I didn't like it very much. Airborder is definitely better in my opinion, and feels more like one of the actual games. It's alright, the gameplay's alright, the song is alright. It also includes the cast roll.
There he is! There he is!
Obviously I'm bringing it up now because this is where I would rank it if I was putting it on the list. 39. Glee Club. As iconic as Glee Club is, it's not one of my favorites. I love the guys and the sounds they make. It's also a very entertaining game to mess up in, but I don't think the gameplay is anything special. 38. Glee Club 2. Glee Club, but with a few slightly harder parts. Out of all the sequels, I think this is the one closest in quality to the original, which probably isn't saying much with how many sequels rank one spot above the original games. While Glee Club 2 is an improvement in terms of gameplay, I think the tropical theme is actually a step down from the first game. Yeah, it's more interesting to look at, but I think the simplicity of the first game's style complemented it. 37. Shoot 'em Up. This one is good. 36. Love Lizards. Out of all the games, I think Love Lizards is the one with the most missed potential. Most minigames in Rhythm Heaven are controlled by tapping or flicking the touchscreen. Only Love Lizards and one other game are controlled by sliding the stylus on the touchscreen. Love Lizards gained some points for feeling different in that way, but unfortunately the game has only a single cue. And it's not inherently a bad thing on its own, but there's no change-up or anything. The game is just a single cue over and over again. Well, that actually makes the game sound long, which it isn't. 35. Karate Man. Yeah, this is probably the most controversial placement on my list so far. I like Karate Man, I like the song well enough, and I sure as heck like Karate Joe. I don't know, I just find the gameplay repetitive, and I feel like it goes on for a bit too long. 34. Dog Ninja. Dog Ninja is a pretty good game. I think the gameplay is very fun, but for some reason I've never gotten the urge to replay this game like I have with so many others, even some I've ranked below this. 33. Karate Man 2. I know people don't like the arrangement of the song in this game, but I don't have a problem with it personally. Otherwise, it's a slightly more difficult Karate Man. 32. Bluebirds. Yeah, we're definitely in the territory of games I have nothing really to say about. Bluebirds is good. The stretch out your neck cue is satisfying to hit, and I like the concept of a bird boot camp. Moving on. 31. Bluebirds 2. The end of this game where you have to do the aforementioned cue about a dozen times in a row is very fun. Otherwise, it's a longer version of Bluebirds. 30. Shoot 'em Up 2. A better version of Shoot 'em Up. What a surprise. The section where you have to double tap is great. Otherwise, yeah, better Shoot 'em Up. 29. Remix 9. This may overthrow Karate Man as the most controversial placement on my list so far, but I don't think Remix 9 is anything too special. It's very good, but it doesn't stand out in comparison to the other remixes, which all have something special that I remember them for. The music is good, but again, nothing special. The best part about Remix 9 is the Moai Doo-Wop transitions. They're actually really cool, but there's only 3 or 4 of them if I remember correctly. 28. Space Soccer. I suck at this game, but I still enjoy playing it. I just wish I knew what I was doing wrong. Sometimes the ball just falls even though I feel like I'm playing perfectly. Oh well. In terms of satisfying cues, Space Soccer's high kick toe would rank very close to the top of the list. It feels great to pull off. 27. Space Soccer 2. Sequel that has basically the same gameplay as the original, but slightly longer and or more difficult. You get it by this point. 26. Frog Hop. Frog Hop is a game I feel like I should like more than I do. It's a tap every beat game, which is probably one of my favorite types. It also has 4 different cues and a pretty cool vocal track, even if I don't like the lyrics that much. Overall, I definitely enjoy this game, but it's not one of my favorites, and putting it at the top spot of the lower half feels about right. 25. Remix 5. In my opinion, this is the most underrated remix in the game. I wouldn't outright call it great, but I think it's a lot better than people online say it is. The gameplay isn't exceptionally strong, and neither are the visuals, but the music is amazing. Twice in the remix during the Frog Hop sections, the music smoothly transitions into a different style, and it sounds so good. 24. DJ School. If you had any doubts about what my favorite set would be this time around, note we are more than halfway through the list and this is the first set 4 game. DJ School has very cool character designs and gameplay that actually lets you play with the music, which is awesome. Still, the gameplay feels a little bit repetitive, but it isn't a major issue because the game isn't too long. 23. Moai Doo-Wop. We are currently living in a time where moais are funny. How much longer they'll be funny, I don't know. Honestly, I think they're starting to decline already, but anyway, Moai Doo-Wop is a very fun game because of the way you have to input the patterns. They're a lot of fun to pull off and only miss inputs sometimes. 22. Moai Doo-Wop 2. Like Fan Club 2, I think this is a big step up from the original in most aspects, but is brought down by a few others. The first 80% of this game is great, with complicated but doable patterns, but once it shifts to night and the song gets slower, I just stop having fun. 21. Frog Hop 2. Frog Hop 2 is a much faster and harder version of the original, with a jazzy music track that I actually prefer to the first games. Besides Philbots 2, this feels like the longest minigame, which is odd considering it's actually shorter than the first game. However, unlike Philbots 2, the length of the game doesn't make me feel bored, it makes me feel tense due to the fast-paced and varied gameplay. 20. Love Lab. Is it just me, or is this the game that most often just doesn't respond correctly to what I'm doing? I won't hold that against Love Lab though, because besides that, it's pretty great. In terms of both music and gameplay, this is a very unique game. It's the game other than Love Lizards that has you sliding the stylus on the touchscreen, and unlike that game, there are lots of cues you'll have to perform. 19. Remix 1. It's pretty funny how the first remixes in both Rhythm Heaven games I've played are amongst the best in their respective games. Now, Remix 1DS doesn't hold a candle to its Fever counterpart in my opinion, but it's a good game nonetheless. I guess now is a good time to bring up that I don't 100% agree with my Fever ranking anymore. There were some games I think I rated too low, specifically Hole in One 2 and some of the remixes. Back to Remix 1, the gameplay is fun, and the fact the game is constantly speeding up over time makes it energetic too. For the longest time, I couldn't hit the Philbots correctly because they prefer late time when I'm usually early. However, likely due to the fact I was playing through my camera's screen which had a slight delay, I was able to hit them. 18. Remix 6. Overall, Remix 6 is just a really cool remix. You can't just do a normal transition into lockstep, so the ones used in this remix are very unique. However, like the Philbots Remix 1, you can't be early. I don't know if this is 100% the reason why it happens, but I read the reason why is because if you tap while the game is transitioning, it'll eat your input. Definitely not a big enough deal for me to rate it lower on the list though. I also love the end of the game where it loops Karate Man to Space Soccer to lockstep. 17. Built to Scale. Rhythm Heaven's introductory game, and a pretty great one at that. Not only is it still fun to play after quote-unquote mastering the game, but it teaches the player about several things they'll see in future games. The gameplay is extremely simple. The widgets will move on the solfege scale and you have to flick when they reach sol. To mix things up, the widgets eventually change speeds, and at the end, the screen will turn mostly black, forcing you to rely on the music. 16. Built to Scale 2. A solid first sequel that applies many of the tutorial elements the original did, but for teaching you how the sequels will work. Built to Scale 2 focuses on filling the empty space of the original with super fast jump scare widgets that are really fun to hit. 15. Big Rock Finish. Big Rock Finish has decent gameplay elevated by a very interesting way of performing its music. Instead of having one set music track, the game has 8 short music tracks that play in a somewhat random order, and all but one of these tracks is really catchy and good. My personal favorite is track G. 14. Remix 3. This is by far the hardest game in Rhythm Heaven DS, at least in my opinion. Or it's at the very least the one that took me the longest to beat, although I doubt it took me as long as Monkey Watcher Remix 10 did in Fever. I've seen people say this game is unfair because it forces you to learn a new pattern for Love Lizards, but that was not my issue. Love Lizards was the only part of the remix I could get consistently on my first try. Obviously, since this game is so high, the difficulty doesn't affect my opinion on it. The music of Remix 3 is incredible, and the gameplay of each section feels completely different from their own game, which I attribute to the swing tempo. 13. Rhythm Rally. Definitely nowhere near on the same level as Air Rally, but Rhythm Rally is still a great game. It's fast-paced, has several different cues, and features an incredibly catchy song. Very simple, but that's not a bad thing at all. 12. Drummer Duel. I find Drummer Duel to actually be one of the more forgettable games of Rhythm Heaven, yet I'd still place it just outside my top 10. I think I said I didn't really like Simon Says games in my Fever ranking, and if I did, I take that back. I just thought I didn't because Fever's selection of Simon Says games is pretty bad. Drummer Duel starts out with a very simple pattern and continues by slowly ramping up its complexity. Eventually, the game will start speeding up, and nailing the patterns correctly during that section is incredibly satisfying and fun. 11. Crop Stomp. Crop Stomp is a weird but interesting game. The music is great and the gameplay feels different than most other games. The most notable aspect of Crop Stomp is probably the sounds. The farmer's noises, the vegetable shouts, and here comes the mole all contribute to the game being as wacky and fun as it is. 10. Munchie Monk. Munchie Monk is a flawed game, but if you thought I wasn't going to put it in the top 10, you'd have to be insane. It's a fast-paced game about a guy slapping dumplings into his mouth. It also features the absolute peak of character design in gaming, the aptly named Munchie Monk. I can't really talk about it long though, due to the biggest issue with Munchie Monk. It's less than 45 seconds long. 9. Rockers. Rockers is easily the best Simon Says game Rhythm Heaven has made in my opinion, excluding a sequel. What makes it different from the others? Simple. Instead of just repeating beats of a pattern, you instead have to remember when to both start strumming and mute the guitar for each one. This change alone makes Rockers far more challenging than any other game of its type. Also, something about playing the guitars and becoming part of the music is just awesome. 8. Remix 10. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, compared to Fever's Remix 10, this is a little lame. The music and flow just aren't nearly as good. Still, by virtue of featuring every minigame, Rhythm Heaven DS's final remix is still incredibly fun and every second feels different to play. It also features some cool things that I don't remember Fever having anything similar to, like the transition from shoot 'em up to lockstep. A great time, but I wouldn't even call it the best remix in the game. There are a couple I'd rank higher, such as 7. Remix 4. Remix 4 features the fastest consistently played song in the entire series, and it really helps the game feel high energy. Most of the games play at half tempo though, so it isn't ridiculously fast. The gameplay doesn't really do anything special, but thanks to that energy, and Set 4 having the best selection of games, it's still super fun. And remember how I said most games play at half tempo? Well, Munchie Monk doesn't, and the Munchie Monk section of Remix 4 is the fastest part of any remix in the series. Six, Lockstep 2. The sequel to Lockstep is slower than the original game and debatably easier. Huh, that's weird. Not gonna say much about this game since we're just outside the top 5, and obviously I haven't gotten to the original Lockstep yet, but I must say, the music of Lockstep 2 is outstanding, and has to be in my top 3 of the entire game. 5. Rockers 2. Rockers 2's gameplay is mostly rockers, but with more complicated patterns, exactly how you'd envision a sequel to be. However, Rockers 2 does something controversial and introduces not just a new mechanic, but one that forces you to use button controls. During the game, you have to press the R button, or L button if you're left-handed, to use the whammy bar on a handful of notes. People criticize this mechanic, saying it's unfair for the game to introduce button controls in the penultimate level of the game. But, I don't know, I got it on my first try. Maybe that's just due to my skill in other games. I beat Ninja Gaiden, I can hit the R button in Rockers 2. 4. Lockstep. Lockstep is known for being incredibly difficult, forcing you to constantly switch between the on-beat and the off-beat. I'm not even going to try to explain what those are. Point is, despite the game's reputation, I was able to beat it on my first try. I don't know, I never found Lockstep hard, but it is absolutely gratifying to consistently nail the timing of the switches, especially when they start coming rapid fire. Additionally, the game is fast and the visuals are really cool, seeing all the step switches combined together to form a picture of Bach. Lockstep is fantastic, and it lands just outside my top 3 games in Rhythm Heaven DS. 3. Rhythm Rally 2. Apologies for the poor quality, but if you couldn't tell, holding the DS for the camera was uncomfortable in the first place, and I was constantly readjusting it. Rhythm Rally 2 hurts enough to play normally, I wasn't dealing with that on top of it. Anyway, Rhythm Rally 2 is Rhythm Rally on crack. In terms of gameplay speed, it's the fastest game of a consistent speed in the entire series, and while I don't think it's the absolute hardest game, it's definitely up there. Like I said, this game can start to hurt near the end because of all the flicking. The game is really long too, and feels like Frog Hop 2 in that aspect. The best part of Rhythm Rally 2 is the music. This might be my favorite song in the entire game, but it's very close between this, Lockstep 2, and one we'll get to in a bit. 2. Remix 8. My favorite non-final remix I've played. Remix 8 is incredible, with exceptional music, extremely high energy, and a great challenge. The main gimmick of the gameplay is having to play while the games transition from one another extremely quickly. It starts out pretty fast and only gets faster. By the end, I'm always struggling to keep up with the speed the games switch at. Luckily, one well-designed aspect of Remix 8 is that pretty much every section is played twice, which allows you to know exactly what you'll have to do the second time. Oddly enough, the best part of Remix 8 is in the middle of it, which you'd expect to be the slowest part. Luckily, it starts off with Lockstep, and that section may just be the most invigorating part of any Rhythm Heaven game. So once again we're brought to number 1, and yet again, anyone who's seen me play the game knows exactly what it is. Going in, I was expecting either Rhythm Rally 2 or Remix 8 to be my favorite minigame, but Munchie Muck 2 is just so unquestionably epic. Yet, I really don't have much to say about it. It's basically just every single compliment I gave the last 10 games over again. Phenomenal and fast-paced gameplay with varied cues. The game is twice the length of the original, fixing my only real issue with it. Entertaining visuals between the monk himself and the elephants and the mice playing music in the background. And of course, the music is the final member of my top 3 in the game. What else can I say? It's Munchie Monk 2. There it is, my ranking of every game in Rhythm Heaven DS from worst to best. Just like last time, here's my set ranking based on the game's positions. What a surprise, set 4 is by far the best. Yeah, those numbers are a lot more polarizing than the ones in Fever, specifically the jump from 29.8 to 18.8. Kinda funny how the number of the set I consider the best in Fever is at the bottom of DS's set ranking. Here are my overall top 10 games, and my overall bottom 5 games and top 5 remixes. I'm aware some of these aren't completely accurate to the lists, but I don't really care. I don't have a joke to end on this time, so I'll end on a cliffhanger instead. Mega Man 4 is the best NES game, find out why next time. Bye.